Hello. I'm sorry I wasn't able to completely get caught up in everything that I was working on here, but I did want to do a couple quick tutorials with you to show you some of the tools. So let's start with the distortion tools. Now, if you need to pause the video, that's fine, and sort of work at your own pace. But I would like you to from the Sakai in Classwork Resources, so on our Sakai site in Resources, in Classwork folder, there's a number of images I'd like you to download. The first is this wheel.psd. The next is this puppet warp image. I'd like you to download CAF2 and CAF1. So before we jump into any of those images, though, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you go File, New, drag that over here, and we're just going to go with sort of a simple image. So I'm just going to go do 250 by 250. We'll go with that. And on here, what we're going to do, make sure the background's transparent, by the way, if you haven't done that. Okay, so what I want you to do here is we're going to create just a simple rectangular marquee. I'm going to fill in that rectangular marquee with a red color. Okay, then we'll go select, deselect. So what we're going to do here is we're going to manipulate this image. We're going to warp it. So I want you to go to Edit. So we got a couple options here. We got Puppet Warp, Free Transform, and Transform. So what I want you to do here is go to just the Transform tools. Free Transform is very similar, except that it's doing them all at the same time. With Transform, we can do one at a time. So we'll pick Transform and then Scale, just to start off with. Change to a cursor over here. Shoot. Okay, do Edit, Transform, Scale. Okay, there we go. Alright, so now what I want you to do is we're going to essentially pull on these different boxes. We got 8 boxes here. We can squish it this way. We can squish it this way. Now the thing to be aware of, you can't see it on my screen, but there's should be on your screen a checkbox somewhere in the corner. So there'll be like a check mark and then like a do not smoking sign. So that's to tell us we're in transformation mode. And in being in that area, we really need to make sure that we are firm on any of the kinds of changes that we want to make before switching over into another mode. We won't be able to edit or do anything unless we're outside of transformation mode. So if you're ever completely stuck, you might just need to make sure and see if you've got that check mark option. So as we talked about before, we can scale anyway. If we pull the corner, we get to do both the top and the side at the same time. Whereas if we just do the side, we get one or the other. If we hold Shift down, we can get proportional scaling. Proportional scaling will mean that the width and the height are in the same relationship to each other. You'll notice up here we also have percentages in the width and in the height, and those allow us to basically show what percentage. So if we want to do a percentage as opposed to an actual just eyeballing it, we can do that this way. This chain link fence makes sure that we maintain the aspect ratio. So you see when I click that, it jumped the one back to what the other value was, change the height. This chain essentially forces us to either maintain or not maintain the aspect ratio as we're making the changes. So don't forget to click that before we're done. Okay, very quickly, I wanted to show you also with regard to the scale, there's one other thing that we can see here. I'm just going to add a quick line to the image so we'll be able to see it. We go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And now what you'll see is if I drag the top portion of the image, the top edge, down below the bottom, it's going to flip the image. It's going to flip it vertically. You're going to see how that hump goes from the top part of the image to the bottom part of the image. It also works from side to side as well. You can kind of see the bump going in the opposite direction. Do the same thing this way as well. So I'm going to undo that. But you can see we can actually use a scale to essentially create mirrors of the image as well. Let me backtrack on that a little bit. Okay, so now let's look at the rotation. So we go to Edit, Transform, Rotate. And by default now you'll see that the cursor has changed from just the simple arrow to looks like a almost like a broken arrow. And in doing that, we can now rotate the object however we want. Edit, undo that really quick. Which this is fine, but let's say we wanted to rotate something around, so this object around another object, as opposed to just rotating the object by itself. We can actually do that. In the center point here, you can actually see that there's this little, almost looks like a little target. So I want you to click and drag that out of here. Now, so you can see we can even drag it outside the image. We can drag it anywhere in the image and even outside the image. When we rotate this, it's going to rotate our shape essentially around the image there. Now we can also use this for the scaling tool. It can be handy if we want to scale, as opposed to from the center, if we want to scale from one of the corners. We can set up the target in that way as well. I'm actually going to cancel out of here. So scale and rotate are probably the two most common, most useful. I'm going to get to skew, distort, perspective, and warp in a second, but I did want to just point out that we've got a few just common things, common transformations that Photoshop wants to provide for us, gives us easy access. The first one is rotate 180 degrees, rotate 90 degrees clockwise, rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So these have all to do with simple rotations. And then we've also got flip horizontal and flip vertical, which does that mirroring effect with the scaling. Okay, so let's look at skew. Skew, the next four I don't find sometimes useful, sometimes not. Skew in particular, I kind of don't see a lot of usefulness for it all the time, but as you can see, essentially what it's going to do is it's going to create rhombus shapes. It's going to essentially skew the edges of whatever shape we've got here. So that's what skew does. Distort gives us basically free control over the individual anchor points, at least the four corner anchor points that we can manipulate. And it lets us essentially pull and distort the image in any way that we want. In a lot of ways this will mirror perspective, as we'll see in a second, but this gives us a lot more control. And then last two we've got our perspective, and as you can see, perspective is essentially, it's going to sort of add the simulated perspective to whatever we're doing. Look, the shape looks like it's sort of moving off into the distance. And this effect is also going to take into account any kind of a texture that we have on the image. As you can see, we can also do perspective from the side if we want, or any individual one side. But we only get one direction at a time. As you can see, it's an easy way to make a triangle that way. But you know, it gives us an ability to add perspective to whatever we want to create. And the last one that I want to work on this sort of dummy image is the warp image. I'm actually going to go back to adding the little colored mark here. Okay, so transform, warp. So as you can see, we got 4 squares like we did before, but now we've got 8 circles around the image as well. As we progress in our understanding of Photoshop, We'll see these tools again when we start using the pen tool. The four squares are essentially known as anchor points, and the circles are known as control points. Now, as you can see, we can, again, just like the distort, we can manipulate these points, the four anchor points, independently. But what we see happening here is that instead of keeping the line straight between, for example, these 2 points that I just moved, it starts curving the line a little bit. And the reason it's curving the line is because of these control points here. As you can see, if I move the control points above the 2 anchor points, it creates an inward circle like this. If I move it below, it's going to create an outward circle like that. Now, also with the control points, how far away it is from the anchor point shows its intensity. So when it's that close, there's really not a whole lot of curve over here. When I go out that far, now it looks like it's almost blowing in the wind. So the best idea that I can think of for the warp tool is if you ever know those car commercials where they have the old model and it's driving on the road, and all of a sudden it starts to peel off, and we get the newer model emerging from underneath, and it's almost like the old model flows off like a piece of cloth. That's basically this effect. Now, it's not happening in Photoshop necessarily, but it's basically this effect. The other example you can find usefulness for this is if you ever wanted to do like a page flip. This is one way that you could go about it. We just go back here. We'll just go to this corner. I might have screwed it up already. But essentially what we can do is move it up here. Now it looks, with this little edge here, it looks like the page is flipping up. Okay, extend it a little bit. Now it really looks like it. So I click there. Now it looks like we got this little page flip. So that's warp. Warp is pretty powerful. We'll definitely see it again.